Next time you're in Dollar Tree, head on over to their wreath section. I found this frosted berry pinecone beaded wood wreath at Kirkland's for $49.99, and I knew we could dupe it using one of these and some floral foam for that pinecone berry bundle on the top. Our Kirkland's piece had white beads, so I decided to paint mine white too. I'm just using some white chalk paint. If you want to spray paint yours or paint your beads however you want, you go right ahead. This is just how I did it. I'm just going to use one of the little squares in that floral foam pack, and I'm cutting out a small section that is going to snugly fit our beads right on in there. I'm going to use some Titebond Quick and Thick to make sure everything sticks together. However, I had a little clog in there again, and I knew my little oddly satisfying lovers out there enjoy watching this stuff. So here you go. Once I had that tube cleared out, I poured a healthy amount into that little space that I cut out in our floral foam and placed the wreath form in there. Then I just went through my floral stash and grabbed things that I had on hand. Obviously, if you need pieces to create your floral part, you go ahead and pick them up. Dollar Tree has pine cones there, they have the greenery there. I just wanted to try and save as much as I could recreating this Kirkland's dupe. It took me a minute to get everything in place and also added some floral moss over top of the foam in spots that were showing. I thought it needed a little something something, so I grabbed my white chalk paint here and a sponge and just tappity tap tap tapped some flocking all over this floral part of our wreath. Here is our inspiration, and here is my dupe that I only spent $2.50 on since I had a large portion of the greenery and the pine cones in my stash. I love some unique bucket decor, so when I seen these pieces on Pinterest, I just knew I had to remake them. And to do that, I headed on over to Dollar Tree, right on into their garden section, where I knew they were going to have at least something similar if they didn't have their original flower and garden pieces. So we're going to leave my piece just as it is, and we're going to need to create that base, and we're going to use some cardboard for that. I know, just hold on a minute and roll on with me. It'll make sense in just a minute. We are going to need a brace for all the things we're going to put on the top of the bucket. You could absolutely use floral foam and cut that down to size, but I chose to use some cardboard, and I'm trimming the top out larger so it just sits right on the top and we can glue that down. Then I'm also trimming down a couple sections that will fit right to the top of the bucket so I can glue them on top of the top. And again, use floral foam if you like. This is just how I chose to go about creating this project. Since my piece of cardboard is going over the top of the whole bucket and I'm gluing that down, I just wanted one piece to kind of stabilize the center of everything. You can use as much as you would like in the center to make sure you have some really good stability. For some of the florals, I headed over to the at-home store. If you guys have one of these local to you, I'd love to share this place. They do have some expensive pieces, but you can also find some really budget-friendly pieces like this one for $4.99 and all of these beautiful stems for $1.49, $1.99, $2.99. And then, of course, I headed on a good old Dollar Tree to grab some little extra bits for our bucket. And some moss. I grabbed some moss. I know, sometimes moss is just essential to your craft stash even though you hate it. We're going to use Titebond Quick and Thick to put a couple stripes on top of our cardboard and just kind of smush that around. Then I'm going to add some hot glue. It's been my experience working with moss, and this stuff, ooh, this had a smell. Why do you stink? Like, ew. What is, ew. Air you out a minute. Anyhow, as I was saying, it's been my experience that if I just use hot glue to attach moss, depending on what I'm attaching it to, it will start to come back up. So I'll use like tacky glue. This quick and thick works really good. I've even used wood glue along with the hot glue to get it down and just have everything kind of stay in place. Then I grabbed some floral foam. I know our Pinterest piece kind of had like that tree effect, and then one had some houses, another one had a little bird. And since I was using owl as my main piece, I wanted to incorporate the same type of tree effect and then just piece it together from there. So I placed the pieces down in what made sense to me, and while it only takes a couple seconds here for you to see it, I actually took about an hour or so putting this all together little spot by little spot. And people, I share this often on the channel. I feel like I'm pretty florally challenged. So it's important for me to take my time doing this to make sure it turned out very similar to our Pinterest pieces. And if I'm being honest, it is one of my favorite floral pieces I've ever made. And I actually had a lot of fun making this. For this Kirkland's dupe, I was searching Dollar Tree's ornaments section to see if I could find something that would work. And lucky for me, I did. They had the bells in silver and gold, however, they were glittery. I know, but we're gonna make this work, okay? First off, we're gonna have to get rid of these little hangers. And honestly, it was really easy. They're these little twisty ties. You just, untwist them and they pop right on off. However, I was already starting to get stressed out because it was getting messy. We are going to put a stop to that by applying 2 layers of Mod Podge on each one of these and allowing them to dry in between. This is going to seal in all them glittery bits and stop them from shedding everywhere, so we can put a layer of chalk paint over top of these pieces. Now I checked them just by rolling them around in my hands to make sure there wasn't a ton of glitter coming off. Now keep in mind, if you want to spray these with some Rust-Oleum clear spray paint, that would work really well also, because there were still glittery pieces coming out of inside of our little bells, but I was fine with it for this. And then I took a sponge and tappity tap tap tapped that chalk paint all over each one of our bells. It ended up taking 2 coats for decent coverage, and once they were dry, it was time to bring on in the hammer. I'm gonna make it make sense. Hold on a second. For the ends, we're gonna be using these little pieces of scrap wood I painted the same color white, okay? As you see me putting these on top here, it's not sturdy, okay? These bells ain't sitting on top of each other without some finagling, and that's what the hammer is doing. It's creating a divot and making the ends flat. So when we put them on top of each other, see how it perfectly just falls in the little divot we've created? That's because the bell stays curved, you know what I'm saying? And you only had to do this to the one side and the piece that was on the top and the bottom, if that makes sense. Hopefully you're rolling on with me. I used some tight Bond Quick and Thick and some hot glue right next to each other to attach everything. This turned out super sturdy, and it surely would not have without me hammering the pieces flat and making those divots, so this way each piece set into each other. I was trying to just pile them suckers right on top of each other. I'm like, I can't figure out how these are just going to stay and be sturdy to hold anything on top of them, and the hammer, it was a problem solver. Now let's take a look at our Kirkland's inspiration for $59.99 and how my dupes turned out up against those beauties for $6.25 because I had the scrap wood in my stash. You could create the ends so many different ways. Even use some little terracotta saucer pieces. That would look really cool as well. But I was trying to recreate these as cheap as possible and using pieces in my stash. I always forget about Etsy and all the amazing things they have to offer on their website, but not today. Not today. People, we are going to be duping this beautiful painted piece from Etsy using some Dollar Tree wood hanging decor pieces. And we're going to need three to be exact. We will need 3 for this project. And some popsicle sticks. Let's not forget the popsicle sticks because we have to make sure that the piece stays together. I just cut the tips off of them, mostly because I don't like the way they look. And if you're going to sell it, it's nice to know that if people turn it on the back, they don't see popsicle sticks just kind of holding their art together. I arranged these in a way so the holes weren't straight down one side. I don't really know what the madness was behind this, but in my mind, if people did notice there were holes, they weren't just right down one side. So I decided to take some painter's tape and plug up the holes on the back. So as we seal them in through the front, this will stop anything from oozing out. Then I grabbed some Gorilla Glue gel and put a couple little dollops on the back here, and then some hot glue and put in between. It's a good idea to try and not overlap your glue that is going to give you that long lasting hold with your hot glue, because it's a good chance that if you overlap them, they might cancel one or the other out. And if you're reselling pieces or giving them as gifts, or you want them to last for a long time in your home, you don't want the possibility of that glue coming apart. To fill up the holes, use whatever makes you feel fuzzy inside. I've used wood putty, spackling, caulking, joint compound, and today we're going to use some of Tim Holtz texture paste. At this point in my life, I feel like I've used this enough to know once it dries, it's going to make sure these holes are nice and plugged up. For the edges, I'm going to just take some antique Waverly wax and a baby wipe and get a nice little brown tint around the edges. I'm going to pop a little picture of our dupe up here in the corner so you can see how beyond that gray paint, we do have some brown stain kind of showing through right around the edges. And that's all I'm trying to do here is mimic that. So I'm not worried about filling in the whole thing with antique wax. Use whatever kind of paint you want. I like to use chalk paint and mix it with different acrylics. I find that if I take some chalk paint, I can really create different color variations with like one coat kind of coverage. And if you use just a little bit of water, you can also spread your paint out. Now, I wouldn't go spraying it in the bottle, but you know, we be bougie on a budget, people, so we gotta spread our craft supplies where we can. And I can for sure just like spraying this wood right here, little bit, couple little squirty squirts, and then smoosh our paint all around. And it really gives a nice coverage and allows us to blend different color paints in really well. I started with the lighter color here, and I'm just using a baby wipe to spread this around, and then I come in with the darker color. And you can see the lighter paint is still wet. It blends really good. If you can keep your surface wet, that's a little tip, you know what I mean? Keep it wet. Get your mind out of gutter, people. We're crafting, okay? Keep it wet. We're crafting. Paint. Okay, move on. The piece was blended really well together. However, in the picture, there are some really dark sections, and I wanted to create that without having it too blended. So I decided to take some of Antiques Waverly Wax with the dark paint I already had just to tint it a smidge. And you'll notice that the paint is still wet on our piece. This is allowing the long strokes that I'm creating with the brush to blend in, but still pop enough that that darkness is going to really be bold on our piece. If you do this once your paint is completely dry, you will really be able to see paintbrush streaks. And you want to make sure you go the whole flow of the board so you don't have abrupt stops in your paint. A good rule of thumb is if you want your paint to flow, don't stop your brush in the middle of a project. Go all the way across and make sure it's a little wet, and it will still blend without leaving paintbrush strokes, stops, and streaks. For our tree, we're only going to need to use a fan brush, and you can use different colors of green to accomplish this. I did not make the tree look exactly like the tree in the picture because I think that is a difficult tree to paint if you're new to painting. And I know 1000% that using a fan brush to recreate a Christmas tree is the easiest way. So if you muck up, it is not a big deal. It is usually extremely easy to fix. I like to go in with my darker colors first. And for this, since I really want it to fill the center with darker colors and have some of that bolder dark green on the edges, I started with that bolder dark green first and kind of got the shape of the tree going. And all you do is put a little bit on the edge of your fan brush and just tap, 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 and just build it up. That's all we're doing here. And you can switch out different colored greens as you go along. When you're happy with how you have it built up, grab you some white paint and then just tappity tap 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 right on the edges. Be very ginger with this, people, and here's why I say that. You want to make sure that there's not a ton of white paint on the brush as you're going through and doing this throughout your tree, because then you'll have globs of white and it's going to be hard to create that branch looking effect like I'm doing here with the tree. As you can see, there's barely any paint on this fan brush. So me just doing a little tap, tap, tap in different sections, even in the center, it is giving the tree the appearance that the branches are going different ways. When you're happy how this looks and stay around the edges of the branches, you can come in how I am here with a couple little thick layers just to add for that snowfall effect, like something landed heavier in this section than it did on the rest of the tree. If you got a stencil, use the stencil. If you have a Cricut or stiletto, whatever the silhouette, stiletto, whatever machine you want to print you out a stencil, you go right ahead. I decided to just freehand this, mostly because to me it looked like whoever had painted this freehanded it as well. So I thought I was just going to do the same thing and give it my best go, and I wrote it how I felt comfortable writing it so it looked authentic and natural instead of just trying to mimic the way they had the words written. So let's take a real quick look at our itsy piece that we are duping today, and now let's check mine out. If you're anything like me, you struggle with florals, and Etsy has a ton of beautiful makers to support who have amazing ideas with bucket decor. I wanted to give my hand at trying a couple pieces and grabbed these buckets from Dollar Tree. I picked up 2 and then grabbed some of my TDS dry rub-on transfers. You'll notice they're all cut up, and that's because I use them all the time. I just cut out some sections to put on these little buckets to give that rustic feel. Really love rustic things, especially around the holidays. And anytime I'm able to shove a pine cone or some wood laser cutouts in anything, I'm game for it. When I was happy with the transfers, I then grabbed some greenery and some floral foam and went ham on my buckets. Absolutely put whatever you would like in your pieces. I love this idea and how amazing little pieces like this can add a little something something to your home around the seasons. Dollar Tree's frame section is a perfect way to dupe some high-end Kirkland's decor, and they have various sizes to choose from. For this dupe, I'm going to go with this large piece right here. If you want to paint your piece, go right ahead. I actually like the frame, and I think it's going to work perfect just the way that it is and the color that it is. So I'm just removing everything, and then I'm flipping the picture over, and we're going to use the white background of it. For this first idea, I'm just going to take a piece of TDS A4 in size rice paper and lay it right over top of that white paper and put our glass down on top of the rice paper. You can cut out a piece of poster board to go on top if you would like, but I felt like this idea was fairly simple, and as you can see here in our Kirkland's inspiration piece, it still gives the same effect. There are so many ways you can take this idea and remix it to fit your decor throughout the year. Dollar Tree has so many different size frames, and painting them to match your home is super simple. Whether your idea is to use a larger piece like this or a smaller piece like this, the idea, in my opinion, is high-end looking either way. For these first two inspirations, I just used TDS creative products, whether I was using tissue paper or I was using rice paper to give you the idea. But you can grab scrap paper from Dollar Tree or little cardstock pieces from wherever, and then just take a dry rub on transfer, and you can get transfers from anywhere. I'm using TDS creative product here. This is a dry rub on transfer, and I'm going to put it over top of a piece of scrap paper that I had in my stash. This is just another idea for you to be able to take this Kirkland's piece and switch it up to make decor that you love that matches your home. Even taking personal photos of family and taking this idea to make decor around the holidays, that would be really cool as well. I was in Dollar Tree's ornament section to find some bells to recreate this Kirkland's dupe. And while they have some bells and larger ones, I didn't really see a way I could recreate those with these. But then a quick shift of the head down and I found these little gems, and I thought to myself, these just might work. And lucky for me, Dollar Tree also has these small candles because I don't think the tall ones would work for our small bells for this. With our crafty items in hand, now it's time to figure out how I'm going to make this work. Despite what some of you may think at home, us DIYers don't always know exactly what we're doing. Well, at least me anyway. I can't really speak for anything else. I mean, there are certain things like I absolutely know, and then there's some things, especially when I'm duping stuff, that I'm not really sure what angle I'm taking to be able to help you recreate it at home. But for this, I really wanted it to be sturdy. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to just make something and be like, oh, this is cute, go ahead and DIY it. Waste your money on, you know, a candle and some bells. No, I wanted you to actually be able to put it out and use it. And I figured out that we can shove these little baby candles in the part that we can push in where the snowflake is on here. So to do that, we're gonna need to bring on in the hammer first of all, because we're gonna have to flatten this sucker out. You feel what I'm saying? We gotta flatten it to make sure it's gonna stay still. So on the back side where you put the little hanger in, I hammered that down to flatten it out because that's the side we're gonna keep on the ground. And then on the opposite side, I kept pushing in the candle where the snowflake was, so this way it caught. But I quickly realized that I might hurt myself using my fingers pressing it in because it is metal, and grabbed a little tool and just pressed it in gingerly. And you want to be mindful with this because if you press it too far, you will not have your candle fit in there to just wiggle around. So, you know, check the candle. Look, I'm so happy I was clapping when it worked. And if you construct it right, it's going to stand up perfectly, be pretty stable, and your candle will fit in there snugly and not move around. So I did this to several more bells, carefully, mind you. And then I even decided to stack some on top of each other. This way you could see what it looked like if you wanted to stack 2 on top of each other or 3 on top of each other. And I used some hot glue and some of my Type-On Quick and Thick to make that happen. I did allow these to dry before I went shoving more candles in here. So this way it was all nice and stable. I thought these turned out super cute. Then it was time to bring on in our napkin. We're gonna decoupage these on here, not just by any way. We're gonna be using our heat gun to melt the napkin in here. Now this is something, if you come to this channel, your girl knows a little bit about decoupage. From small crafts to large furniture pieces, you name it, I have probably decoupaged it. Instead of doing this to the entire candle because it can be a pain, I decided to just take a little bit of water onto a paintbrush and trim out pieces of this napkin. I really like the small bits, and I also felt like it was pretty similar to the way that the candles were in our inspired piece that Kirkland had. This can be a little painstaking when you're trying to make sure that you trim something out, but having water on a paintbrush makes your life a lot easier to get really specific when you're trimming down a napkin or tissue paper or some rice paper even. I did the same thing for 4 different designs. Obviously, do this with whatever works best for you, whatever napkin you would like. And then I placed it on our candle exactly where we wanted it. I gingerly wrapped it around. You're going to want to use a piece of parchment paper for this, not wax paper, okay? Parchment is for heat. And wrap it around your candle. I like to use the rub and roll method with this, but the candles were so tiny, I wasn't able to do that as well as I usually do. And while you're heating up your candle, and yes, you can use an iron if you want, it is not my preferred method. I've shared that before. I like to use the heat gun. I allow this to get hot. Keep in mind, it's hot. Like I said a couple times, it's hot. So watch your fingers, okay? But what you're gonna want to experience while you're doing this is the napkin is gonna turn translucent because that wax is sopping up right through those pores. And when you have that, you have a really good connection. All the spots that are still white instead of translucent, you need to just heat up more and put the parchment paper to smooth it out. It helps reduce wrinkles. I also realized that if you heat up the bottom, if your candle was a little wiggly and stick it down in there, it's another way for you to have really great stability with these adorable pieces. If I'm being honest, I don't feel like $12.99 is a bad price for these. Not at all. However, I do feel like the $2.50 plus tax I spent on my pieces, they're pretty great too. I fell in love with these snowflake door corner pieces I found on Etsy. And I thought to myself, Dollar Tree has these large MDF snowflakes that we may be able to dupe this with. One thing's for certain, we're gonna get one corner out of this one snowflake. You know what I'm saying? I used a large paint stick to brace and just cut us a nice little corner out. And I made sure to include that circular hanger bit because we're not going to be needing it. Then it was just rinse and repeat over and over again with the box cutter. Make sure you're protecting yourself along with your surface as you're doing this. And no, scissors won't work. I tried. All in all, it really took me about 10 minutes to get this section cut out. You could absolutely use whatever means necessary you want. This is just how I went about it. And then I used my little finger sander to sand down any excess. For the color, I'm just using white. Absolutely use whatever color you feel is mingling with your decor this season. I did not put any hangers on the back of this. I figure we're going to be sitting it on the trim over top of the door. So I just took a couple little pieces of painter's tape, balled them up in the back and put them on the very ends of the snowflakes. And you can see that it's pretty flush up against the wall, just like that. And I don't have to worry about it messing up my paint when I take it off that corner. This Etsy piece, you could certainly cut up and create it. However, I grabbed this last year at Five Below and thought it would make the perfect thing to create this dupe with. And it was just $4. Now, truth be told, my friends, I have not been to Five Below searching for this piece this year, so I'm not sure if they still have it. So you might have to build your own. Just kidding. Hopefully they have it. Okay, hopefully they have it. I'm going to recreate this with the intent and sending out the positive vibes that if you want to recreate this at home, Five Below has this waiting for you. This might have been one of the easiest things I've ever had to assemble. And just to make sure that the piece didn't go falling apart, I grabbed some of my Gorilla Glue gel to smoosh right on in between these little sections. You could certainly use wood glue if you had it. I just had this right next to me and thought I was gonna just smoosh a little section in one of the little sides. I did the same thing for the top of the piece, push that to the side, and then grab me some greenery and a couple of these little candy picks that I think I picked up from Hobby Lobby. Don't quote me on that one. I attached everything together with a couple little pieces of wire and glued it to our tree, and this piece turned out so amazing. Let's take one last look at the Epsy piece, and now let's check out mine. I am a big fan of plate decor, so when I seen this piece on Pinterest, I was like, oh yes, we have to try and dupe this. Now I know Dollar Tree has some chargers, and I didn't have any of those on hand, but I did have this one on hand in my stash from Christmas tree shops. It was only $2.99. I missed that store. It went out of business. Anyhow, I'm gonna give mine that frosted frothed, what is it? What is the correct term? Flock is what Google told me. To give a tree a heavy layer of artificial snow to make it look like it's covered in snow. You're welcome for the little educational lesson. Since our Pinterest piece looked like it was flocked, I mean, at least in my opinion, it looked like it was flocked. Anyhow, we're just painting some white paint over it, okay? We're just taking a dry brush and just a little dry brushing. Then I went rummaging around in my stash for a word, and I found joy hanging out in my little metal container. Use whatever word you would like. If you have bless, by all means, pop that on there. I also grabbed some florals that I had left over from a recent trip to the at-home store and Dollar Tree, and just cut these down to size to go along the side of our plate. To attach everything together, I just grabbed some twine and I wrapped it completely around the center. I also really like that rusted look that the twine gives, so this just made sense to me. Attach yours, of course, whatever way you think works best. And then grab whatever accents you think makes sense. I had some ornaments from Walmart and Dollar Tree and just cut up little pieces to place in mine. This is one of my favorite pieces I've ever found on Pinterest. Now, mine's going to be a little bit different, of course. We're going to use these smaller pieces I picked up in a bag from Hobby Lobby on one of my browsing trips. Are you guys hanging out with me on my browsing channel? Because if not, you're missing out on things like this. And I got these on sale. Okay, moving on. A while back, I used one of these. This is a wood burning marker, okay? I used one of these and I tested it with an actual wood burner. The results of this were pretty impressive. So instead of possibly burning my house down or losing an eye from heat burn, I decided to use this instead of my wood burner. And people, I was extremely skeptical about this. Even though I had really good results with the marker, I used that on regular wood. I didn't use it on like little log pieces like this. So I was nervous, but I had hopes. But I was extremely nervous to use the wood burner because as you can see, it looks like the bark is kind of moving. I was scared that that wood burner would actually catch these on fire and start burning. I know you guys would love to see that and how I react to that, but not in today's show. All right. Next, we're going to bring in the heat gun. So when you're happy with your design, you're just going to use a heat gun, regular old little heat gun. That's all we're doing here. I purchased this joint on Amazon and the marker on Amazon. I think the marker is linked down below in my Amazon store. And I can't stress how simple this is, people. Now, if you have a stencil, use a stencil if you're not really good at drawing. Honestly, mine was not the best here either. I just wanted to give you guys the option of freehanding it if you wanted to. But honestly, if you have stencils and you want to color them in, it will work the same. This marker actually does not bleed that bad. Now, on this piece of wood, and the other one where I make the Y, as you can see, some of the little pieces of bark were kind of shedding off. And that became a little bit of a pain. It didn't take me a whole lot of time to do this project, roughly about 30 minutes, but that was me kind of going back over and filling in and trying to get the bits that were consistently getting on the marker off the marker from the wood. Once this little piece was done and I had the O done, I was like, these kind of look a little plain. So I went back and looked at the Pinterest piece and noticed the O had some decorations on it. So I just decided to add in some on the top here. And of course, these bits, they were such a pain. And I did not have this issue at all using the product on wood itself, just this because the wood was just frying off here, the bark, whatever you guys want to call it. I really love these pieces and how they turned out. I honestly have another idea for them coming up in the spring. I plan on doing, hopefully I can remember to do it. I got to put it on my list of things to create. The Pinterest picture had some red ribbon around the bottom of all three of them. It also had them sitting inside of candle holders. I decided to just leave mine standalone, and I didn't have any of a matte color ribbon. I just had this shiny red ribbon and added it to the bottom of the J and the Y. And I really like how these pieces turned out. Christmas palette decor from Pinterest. I don't mind if I do, especially a little wood basket. So I grabbed some of Dollar Tree's wood palettes, 3 of them to be exact, in this style and 2 in this style. And I grabbed some paint sticks, which I get from Home Depot, in case anyone's wondering. I'm going to use some antique Waverly wax for our color, and I'm going to add a little bit of water. This just helps move the antique Waverly wax around. I also do this with paint. I've painted hundreds of palettes at this point on this channel. I've shared many different techniques to be able to do this. If you can't spray paint them, adding water to paint or antique Waverly wax, it helps, but people, I still hate it. Definitely not one of my favorite things to paint or stain. I took a minute and pieced everything together with these palettes once they were dry, and then just added a little bit of hot glue to start. I find when I'm not sure the exact placement of something, that's always a good idea to start with, and then I'll come back in with some Type-On wood glue or some tacky glue, or here I'm using the Quick and Thick on a paintbrush and just going over everything, all the seams, to ensure that we get that nice long hold. I found a little snowflake stencil floating around in my stash, so I grabbed some white paint and a little paintbrush and just went in very gingerly on our piece, coloring it in. I then grabbed our paint sticks, and people, this is completely up to you. Measure them how high you would like, and then trim them down to whatever size you would like, and then just attach them. I used some more of my Type-On Quick and Thick and put everything all together, added in some greenery, and I love how rustic this little piece is. While we're here We're gonna grab some of their plungers. I know, plungers, Brandy, what the hell? We need the wooden handle pieces on these joints, okay? We need them. I promise it will all make sense and it will be worth it. Just stick around, hang out, okay? We're gonna cut these down into 3 different sizes. You could use 2 plungers and pull this off. And if you don't have, or you're worried about using a miter saw, use a little miter box. I didn't really measure these out. I just kind of eyeballed it. And the 2 longer ones are just slightly bigger than the other. And then the smallest one is identifiably smaller than the other 2. And then I took some wire cutters and made some gouge marks in our rods. Now I stayed mostly to the edge, because we're not really going to see the center. We're going to wrap it in some ribbon. So don't waste your time putting a whole bunch of gouges in the center of your little rods. If you want to put a couple extra in there, just like I did, just to make it look more authentic, you go right ahead. That's really all I did. Just threw a few in there, like you can see right here. So once you have them looking like this, we're then going to take some antique Waverly wax. We're not going to have to put this all over our little dowel pieces. You just really want to get it inside of those little gouge marks. This is going to give us an authentic look once we put our white paint over this. Now you can, if you want to cover the whole thing, you go right ahead. This is what mine looked like when I was completely finished. I let these dry because antique Waverly wax is a little wonky if you don't and you try to paint over it. My paintbrush was not completely saturated in the paint. It was more on the dry end, but enough that I was getting coverage as I was going. I wanted to make sure that I didn't put too much on here that it would seep in our gouge marks, because then, you know, that just kind of defeats the purpose of the gouge marks. I do just want to let you know that if you do not want to use plungers and you want to go with a little bit of a thicker style, they do sell thicker rods at Hobby Lobby and Home Depot. But seriously, people, how amazing and authentic do these look? But we're not done yet. We are going to now take a little fan brush, okay? We're going to take a little bit of gray paint, and honestly, the gray is at your discretion. I just used whatever apple barrel gray paint I had sitting close to me, dabbed in my brush, and spun this little rod gently. And I did this down the whole rod, you know, well, till we got to the middle, because we weren't wasting time doing the middle. No one's going to see the middle. And then I dry brushed back and forth like this over the entire piece. And I did this for all 3 of these. And this is at your discretion. So when you're happy with the dry brushing, just stop. This is where I stopped. I let this dry. It took about 10 minutes. Now we're going to attach our ribbon. I picked some up from Dollar Tree. This was the only red that I could find there. It wasn't as dull as the dupe, but I don't really do exact dupes anyway. I do more of inspired dupes and put my own spin on it. So this is going to do the job just fine. I decided to glue everything together. I'm probably going to resell these little pieces at my little vendor space. And I'm just taking some wood glue here, attaching the pieces together. And I'm going to use a piece of twine to hold them in place. You're not going to see the twine. It's going to be underneath of the red ribbon. You can skip this part if you want. This way you can also switch things out as you go if you get tired of the red, or if you want to add more little dowel pieces. Completely up to you. I do want to share real quick though that make sure you're paying attention to the dowels as you're placing them if you're going to glue them together, because not all sides of the dowel are created equally, okay? Some sides look just a little bit better. And I was spinning them around, so if you see me moving around, that's because I wanted to make sure that the better looking side was facing outward as the decor spot. I did do a fancy little, you know, cut on the end of the ribbon and then just did one tie. I then decided I was going to take some tacky glue and adhere the pieces down. This is just a little envelope I had laying around, and I am cutting it to the shape of a tag so we can write our Merry Christmas on here. And I just tried to write as cursive and old school as I possibly could for our tag. This is probably one of my favorite Christmas pieces I have made so far this season. It is simple and elegant looking. I just love how it turned out, and I can't believe it came from plungers. When I people, I was like, I have to build him. And to do that, I'm taking this 2x3 I had laying around in my patio. You can pick these up from Home Depot. This piece is really raw and rustic, not sanded, anything. I just cut 3 different sizes, the head of course being the smallest size. And then once I had them all laid out, I thought, just in case you guys want exact measurements, let me go ahead and show you what I have here, because I just wung this, okay? I just wung it and eyeballed it and was like, this is good, we're just gonna cut it on down. Then I'm using Type-On wood glue and some hot glue to attach these. The hot glue is going to get these suckers stuck together immediately, and that wood glue is going to give you that long hold. I'm also, just for a little extra insurance, gonna bring in the stapler, and we're going to put some staples in the back of this piece just to make sure that it is held together really well. The amount of staples is of course completely up to you. I also recommend using a dowel. You can drill a hole in the center of these pieces and then place some wood glue in there. It will give you a little bit better of a hold. Always clamp your pieces down and let this dry 3 to 4 hours. I was on a time crunch here to get this finished, so I only let it dry for 30 minutes. And then I was very gentle the rest of the time I was holding it so the sucker didn't come apart. I found this white paint laying around, so I figured we'll just use this. I saved you the painting. You're welcome. We are going to take a fan brush though and give it a little dry brushing just all the way across, not stopping in the middle. We don't want to have like any abrupt pieces in our wood area, just kind of on the edges with the paint. And then I'm going to just fray this ribbon up for the scarf. To do that, I'm just cutting the edges of the ribbon off, and then I'm going to just pull out some of those pieces to give it that frayed look. If you are interested in more of a detailed tutorial about this little guy, I did create one of those. I will put a card up here for you. I will also link that video down in the description box. I don't always have the time on Fridays to really go into great detail on certain projects, so I started a little tutorial series where I do tutorials on Tuesdays a couple times a month, and I felt this guy needed a little bit more attention. So I do have a little tutorial on him. For the eyes, I used a permanent black marker and a little orange colored pencil for the nose, added some of these bells for the buttons, and he is so flippin' precious. I absolutely love this little guy. People, nothing about this project went as expected. It was a nightmare. I don't even know where to begin. It just didn't go as I had hoped. I guess we'll start our story at the beginning. I picked these beautiful bowls up at Ross on one of my browsing trips. These were only $5.99, and I didn't know initially what I wanted to do with them. I might have decoupaged them or something, but I've held on to them for quite some time. So when I seen this dupe, I was like, this is it. This is what we're going to do. We're going to turn these into beautiful candles. We're going to use my natural wicks. We're going to use my natural beeswax. I try to use all natural products. You're welcome to use Dollar Tree pieces if you want. I try not to use those things. And some good essential oils, because all essential oils are not created equally. You want to make sure that what you're using actually is 100% pure grade and not full of synthetic fragrances. And yes, it does matter. You are breathing these things in, but you guys do you. I'm just telling you how I roll and a healthy way to, fragrant your DIY candles up. Now, this was my first mistake. I used this tiny little glass container. I filled it all the way to the top. I went and I got it cooking, okay? Then while it's cooking, I'm taking our little wick, I'm gluing it down in the center, you know, doing all the things. Then I come back with the hot wax and start pouring it in. And I realized this is not enough. So I got the bright idea to throw a couple extra pieces in here because I watched YouTube, and YouTube told me that using a heat gun would warm the wax up. Well, all that did was throw the wax everywhere. And then it's so hot, it's sticking to my fingernail. And then I'm paying too much attention to cleaning up the table because I had blown this wax everywhere that I melted the bowl. And then the wax looked like a hot flipping mess. It wasn't even. So I let it dry and come back at it with the heat gun again to try and salvage this hot mess. Don't believe everything you watch on YouTube, people. You heard it from me first. Oh gosh. I really did try to salvage this, and I did the best I could. Okay. Oh God, it's sad. I'm sorry. Oh yes. Yeah, I came back in with the heat. It just, I don't know. It doesn't evenly adjust it. I don't know if I'm blowing it the wrong way. Okay, I'm calm now. I did not think I was going to have that reaction rewatching the editing, doing this voiceover, but oh my gosh, it was just as funny doing this editing as it was going through it. I decided that at this point, we're just going to wrap this one up with our ribbon, throw the little greenery pieces and our pine cone on here to make the best of this dupe, and that is it for this piece. Told me people like to watch me paint, so we're gonna need some long signs to dupe these pieces, and I grabbed these Scarecrow ones from Dollar Tree. I took the happy fall pieces right off the front of their faces. These were so big we're gonna film in the patio so I can get them all in the frame. We're gonna start by giving them a base coat of this charcoal, and for my spray paint lovers, I got your back. Once that dried, I went over it with a white and a gray paint. I just mixed them together for the background. This is what we are going to use as our base color. And for all of you judging me right now because I got my purple smock on, my Christmas themed sleeves, no socks. Mind your business, okay? In my creative zone. I was trying to get everything in the frame and there was just no easy way around it, okay? Anyhow, all I'm doing here is creating the faux wood slat look, and I'm just using a pencil and one of the other Scarecrow boards to accomplish that. The dupe had 4 slats. I'm just using 3 with the thicker in the center and 2 small ends on the sides like this. And I did this for all 3 boards. And how I did that is I put one board on top the other slightly down so I could see where I marked them originally, and then use the other board to draw a straight line on the top. And these don't have to be perfect anyway. They're not the main showcase, and real wood isn't perfectly straight anyhow. Well, most of the time it's not. And the dupe itself, it's really vinyl. What the Etsy store was selling was the vinyl pieces at the very top. I just happened to like the decor that was in there. I'm like, we're duping this. Y'all know I ain't turning that Cricut machine on. Here is our color palette. We're going to use all these colors, nothing else, just differently for each tree. Each tree is slightly different than the other, which is another reason I love this so much. I'm using 3 different paintbrushes as well to accomplish these. We're going to start out by creating the stems, and I'm mixing some black and brown for this. Since the trees are big, we're going to need a thicker paintbrush. We are not trying to be here all day. And if I'm being 100% legit with y'all, it took me about 40 minutes to paint the 3 of these trees. Since the bulk of your paint is on the brush at the very first stroke, I'm starting at the bottom of the tree and then just gliding our paintbrush up, because we're not going to really see the top of the tree, but we will really see the bottom of the tree. And I did this for each one of the trees. Now here's where I mucked up a little bit. I got a little bit cross-eyed, I guess is a way to say this, because I had the boards directly next to each other and I misplaced the center in the last one. So I wasn't trying to repaint it and go over again. To adjust this, I erased the pencil line and moved over our faux wood slats. See how I'm showing you? And then came back in with some paint and just made its trunk a little bit thicker. So that trunk just has a little bit bigger of a bottom than the other trees, but it all worked out just fine. And at this point, if you're gonna make adjustments to the trunk, I would do that before you start putting on your branch tree pieces, the green spaces. For our first tree, I'm using this type of paintbrush. And we're going to go in with the dark green first. And I'm putting a healthy amount. And we're just going to do little stripes on the sides. Not completely straight. We're going to kind of curve them a little bit. And go just like this all the way down to the bottom of the tree. I'm not putting them right on top of one another. We do not want to actually smear our lines. And when they dry, you're welcome to go back up and add more in. So this way it looks like we are layering and just adding in the different levels that you would see when you're looking at a tree. While this was drying, I started on the second tree. I'm using this type of paintbrush for this tree, and the best way I can describe this is we're going to paint sideways birds. And we're putting a decent amount of paint on the end of this brush, and we are patting the brush, pushing it downward for the wings of our bird. And we're also going to flip the way the bird leans on our branch or on our stem or trunk as we go down the tree. And we're going to make these bigger as we go down as well, because we're going to add in another sideways bird and it's going to be a different color. So we're starting with the dark one first, and I do this all the way down. As you'll see, I alternate the sideways bird. I'm sorry, I don't know how else to describe that. It looks like, if you're looking at a painting, you know how they paint little birds? That's what these look like to me. And we're just going to make these, like I said, all the way down. Once I was happy with these, I took a little bit of the black and some of the green and then gave some of our birds an extra wing. I really just went in and created some extra pieces to give a different color variation and to hide some of the bigger gaps. When I was happy with that, I took the same brush and then used our lighter green, I think it's called celery color, and I'm going to then create more little birds. But we're gonna do it attaching the center of our bird in the center of the birds we already created, and just have their wings going a different way. So it creates little bundles of branches in different sections of our tree. I hope this makes sense. That's the best way I can think to describe it. And I did this for the entire tree. For our last tree, we're going to use a fan brush, and we're going to start out with our dark green and just tap the tip of the brush, and we're just going back and forth, starting very small at the top. And that's all we're going to do. Just tappity tap, 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 back and forth, creating straight lines with our fan brush all the way down our tree. Since I usually start trees with a darker base, I did go a little bit wider in certain sections than I should have, but I like the end result. I wish I would have stayed slightly thinner at the very top than how I'm getting a little bit wide right here. Wish I would have done that for, you know, just to give you guys a little, you know, if you're going to do this, I would recommend just staying really skinny at the top. But at the end of the day, the result was beautiful. It took a little bit longer than I would have liked for the first tree to dry, but I needed to wait for that to dry so we didn't smear these sections. And I'm coming in with that lighter green and then just going in between the gaps with the same type of stroke to give this more depth. And then we're taking that same light color and bringing our fan brush in, and we're going to go back to our last tree. And here I did not move the camera. So I'm gonna just skip it on over to the section where I noticed that there was a problem. There we go. Pay no attention to the fact that most of the tree is already painted. I love y'all. I just forgot to move it. I wasn't trying to exclude you from the painting. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Okay. Let these completely dry. I guess that's going to really depend on how thick the paint is that you're applying, but it took mine about 10 minutes. And then we're going to come in with the fan brush on this tree to add in our faux snow, or our snow. I mean, we're painting snow, so is it really faux? I don't think it is. And you can be as creative as you want on this section and add as much as you want. Just make sure you stay in between your sections. And then when you get around to your edges, if you want to leave it or add more, it is entirely up to you. For this tree, we're just going to take the fan brush and go right across just like we did with the other two colors. We're just going to do that with the white, and we're going to do that on the edges of the colors to, again, make it look like we have snow on our tree. And back to the first tree, because we had to wait for this to dry, we're going to just do the same thing here. We're going to use our original paintbrush for this, not the fan brush, and add on our snow to the ends of our tree pieces. I absolutely love how these three pieces turned out. Now, I didn't add the stars at the top or the words because, you know, I put my own little spin on these dupes. For the most part, I think I pretty much nailed this. Let me know what you guys think. While I was watching this video on Pinterest, I seen these little frames in the background. I'm like, that looks really familiar. I think I have some of those. And I do. I had these Dollar Tree frames. They're like chalkboard pieces. Had a couple of them, so I figured I would take some white paint and recreate those little frames, but put my own designs right on the inside. These can be a pain to paint to begin with, so I like to start with a sponging and then I'll go over them with the paintbrush and a fan brush and a detail brush allow them to dry. Usually it takes about 3 coats, but when you want to get in all those tiny details with a different color, and here I'm going to be using Antique Waverly Wax, take a tiny detail brush and go in all those little sections. Once it dries, no matter what color you're doing this with, I've done this with a couple different colors, it looks a little weird, but I promise you take some of the paint that you had as your main base and you dry brush right over it, and it just blends out all those beautiful details. Off camera, I gave the backside of those chalkboard pieces a nice coat of white paint. This will serve as a nice background for our TDS Rice Paper designs. These are A4 in size, and I'm just gonna take them and place over top of our little cardboard pieces, and then just press around where I need to cut and trim for the design that I want to be on the inside of the frame. You can attach your rice paper however you would like. I'm going to use some good old Mod Podge and put a nice little coat on these pieces and then apply our gorgeous rice paper right to them. I wanted to share how this idea is awesome, whether you're using it for one beautiful single piece that you want to kind of make the center of attention, or if you are wanting to highlight the background of something, these frames and this idea is absolutely perfect to just add some unique decor into your home this holiday season. I absolutely thought this framed paper dot Christmas tree was beautiful, and I got the idea to create something similar with some napkins. So I grabbed a Dollar Tree frame and I painted it up white with my Waverly Snow White chalk paint, allowed this to dry, and then I went and grabbed some cardboard to trim it down to size for our backing. I decided to go with cardboard. If you wanted to use real wood, you absolutely could, but I knew Dollar Tree had these amazing wallpaper pieces, and it was just a matter of picking which one was going to be perfect for the background on our piece. So I grabbed a couple and then made a couple comparisons with the frame and with the napkins until I decided which wallpaper I thought would match the best. Then I trimmed the wallpaper down to size, attached it to the cardboard, and put it inside our frame. For the tree trunk part, I just grabbed some dowels and I cut them down to size. The size really is relative according to what you think is long enough. I didn't measure mine, I just eyeballed them and went with it. Two of these pieces are napkins, and then one is a piece of burlap. I couldn't really find a blank napkin that I felt made sense with these two pieces, so you'll notice here that I'm using double-sided tape to attach the napkin. I want it to have some freedom that if I mess this up, I could pull it back off. So I started out with the double-sided tape. I put like 2 or 3 strips down, and then gave it a little bit of a wavy appearance. You could do this as much or as little as you would like. I just went with a minimal amount just to give a little something something. You can absolutely leave it flat, completely up against the board. You could grab some scissors, give it that scalloped look, but I decided just to do that mostly with the napkin pieces. I used hot glue for the burlap because I knew that the glue wasn't, or the tape wasn't really going to hold that into place, and then just alternated with the layers and trimmed the tree up as I attached everything into place. At the top of my tree, I decided to add a little bit of greenery and a star. Absolutely finish off your piece however you would like. I love how shabby chic this piece turned out. How adorable are these faux Christmas tree crochet planters I found on Etsy? And people, no worries. If you can't crochet, I have some options for you to be able to dupe this piece. First up, we're going to head on into Walmart and grab a couple of these terracotta planters that are only 97 cents each. They also have an option where you can get 3 of them in a pack for $2.48. But I decided to roll on with the 97-cent ones. If you can't crochet, people, head on over to Dollar Tree, especially this time of year. They got the hats, they got the gloves, they got the head wraps, and they got different colors. This was the only one I wanted to use for this project. For the color that they had, I didn't see any red or greens. So I grabbed this head wrap in the white, and I just kind of took a second to realize we needed to paint our pot. Okay, we need that terracotta pot color in the background to just go away. And I do just want to remind everyone it's important to check the paints you're using to make sure that they go on the surfaces. I use multi-surface paint for this. I decided to go ahead and paint an extra red one and a green one. We'll get to that in just a little bit. I allowed these to dry 24 hours for some cure time to ensure that this tacky glue was going to not just pop right back off once I attached it over top of the paint instead of directly onto the terracotta pot. I spread this out in several different sections because I knew we were going to have to use hot glue to get that immediate bond, especially around the edges, to be able to stop this piece from completely fraying once we started to cut it. In my experience, tacky glue works really well with fabric onto plastic, onto glass, onto wood, onto terracotta. So I knew that for a long hold, it was going to be important to have that underneath of the fabric. However, being able to get it on immediately and stay in place, we're counting on that hot glue for that effect. I went all around the rim on the top, securing everything until it met in the back, and then I pulled it all completely snug and then did the same thing at the bottom and then trimmed it all down. I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to keep in mind that this must be glued down before you start trimming off the excess. If it's not glued and you start trimming, those frayed bits are not going to stay. For the other two pots, I wanted to share some cool ideas. Dollar Tree did not have any yarn I was looking for or crocheted pieces. So I ran one into Walmart where I was able to pick these up for $3.42 each. I love the colors and I love how thick the yarn was. I felt like these were going to be perfect for these two ideas. And for those of you that don't know this about me, I can actually crochet. Now, don't be hitting me up in the comments, getting your panties in a bunch or your trousers, because I'm not using the exact technical terms here in crochet lingo, okay? I don't teach crochet and I just know what I know and I don't know why I know it. I was taught it little and for some odd reason it was like riding a bike, okay? For the crocheters out there, I wanted to share this idea for just another thing to get crafty around the holidays. I used a chain to create the length for the bottom of the pot, and then I did a single stitch. And I'm pretty sure those are the correct terms. Okay, pretty sure. I just did a single stitch for the height of the pot. And the reason I only did the chain for the bottom of the pot is so we could wiggle our whole piece over the pot so it fits snugly on there without having to glue it. This way you could absolutely switch this out as the seasons or your decor style changed. You could just change the crochet pieces that you created to go around your little decorative planners. When I was all done with that, I took an extra piece of yarn to attach the two ends on the back and then wiggle our piece onto our planner. For the green yarn, we're going to just create a braid. Now, to do that, I'm going to need something to hold the end of that braid on. So I'm just taking one of my containers, opening it up, tying a knot, and then pushing down the top of that knot into the container. It's just going to hold it into place for me while I'm braiding. I mean, you guys do this however you want to hold your braid down. Okay, don't let me stop you. Then just begin braiding and braid for as long as you think you need to get the amount of braid. I didn't measure it, I'm sorry. And that's all we're going to do for this one. We're going to take that braid out and we're going to just wrap it around our pot. I'm going to use some tacky glue and some hot glue, start at the bottom and work my way up. So this way, if you cannot crochet, and if you're at Dollar Tree or you're at your local stores and cannot find any budget-friendly crocheted pieces to be able to recreate this, you can easily grab some yarn and then just make a braid and do this with as many different colors as you would like and have some really amazing pieces to add to your decor. You can fill yours with whatever you would like. I grabbed some messy moss and I grabbed some little greenery pieces, and that's going to be it for these. Painting trees has become a tradition on this channel each season. So when I seen this gorgeous rustic ornament set, I knew I had to try my hand at making a couple. I had these ornaments in my stash that I picked up a couple weeks back from Amazon and picked out two. Here are the three colors I'm going to be using to paint these two ornaments. I'm going to also be using a fan brush. Are you surprised? Honestly, fan brushes are best for trees. I can't even count how many trees I've painted over the years, even before I started crafting. And it just allows you to be able to make edges of the trees so well. You can take that fan brush, angle it to the sides, and you can blend different colors of green to get different highlights, add in some depth. If you allow the colors to dry, you can just continue to layer and get really cool looks. Once this was dry, I then grabbed a little dotting tool, some of that white paint, and then sprinkled some snowflakes over the ornament. And then on our next one, I did 3 trees and applied the same technique. I got way too excited when I found this snowman face for the garage on Etsy. Putting up decorations in the winter can be a struggle for me because I live in a windy area. I knew I could dupe this with some removable vinyl, and lucky for me, I had a bunch in my stash of Cricut removable vinyl. Obviously, use whatever you have access to. This is what I had on hand, and then I grabbed a little wood circle that I had sitting off to the side and felt this would be the perfect size. I trimmed out 5 circles for the smile, and then I made 2 eyes that were a little bit longer than the circles for the smile. I didn't have any orange vinyl, so I had to get crafty and take my white vinyl and put a layer of Waverly pumpkin chalk paint over top of this. Now, I let this dry for about 2 hours, and if you notice, you can take your finger and that chalk paint, it's gonna come right off the vinyl. So to protect it, I'm gonna use a little layer of Mod Podge dishwasher safe and allow this to dry. This is gonna just give it a little bit of protection, so if it rains, my nose is gonna stay orange. Then I just trimmed out a carrot shape for our nose. I took my time placing each piece on the garage, and then when the season is all over, I can just pull these right on off. I admire hand-painted glass anything, but this little snowman reaching for these snowflakes on this glass bottle was so adorable, I had to try and dupe it. Now, lucky for me, I have a friend that saves all types of glass for me, and they happen to have this green bottle, which was perfect for this project. I'm going to use multi-surface paint for this project. I know multi-surface works well on glass. Make sure whatever you choose to paint with, it says it works on glass. There are a bunch of ways that you can make your piece sturdy. You see here that I'm using some sponges just to keep it like stabilized, but I'm also picking up the piece, putting it back down, trying to 1, make sure it's not rolling all over the place, and 2, making sure you have a good view. It took me about 2 days overall to paint this piece, and it's important that when you're painting, your strokes, they go in the way that you're trying to have somebody view what you're sharing. When I work on something like this, I notice that it's just best if I'll do a certain type of layer and then I'll allow it to dry, come back in with some shading, and back and forth. I am not a professional painter, and I explain things as best as I feel that I can, so that way you at home can try and recreate whatever you see me creating. I've been painting probably longer than I've been doing anything. My mother has ceramic pieces that are over 30 years old. That's how long I've been painting. You can absolutely use different variations of gray, different variations of white. You'll notice here that I'm literally just taking the black and the white, mixing them together to get that perfect shade of gray. And then I'm even switching it up, making it a little bit deeper. Sometimes it's just best to keep things simple, especially when you're trying something you've never tried before, trying to pull in so many colors. It can really just frustrate you and possibly make a mess. When I got to this point, I knew I was going to need to color in more of those white sections, add some more highlights, as well as color in this yellow scarf a couple of times. I also noticed my hand was hitting that paint, and I figured it's time to let this sit and dry overnight. The next day, I started off with the snowflakes, and I painted some, and I used the other end of my paintbrush and dotted some pieces on there. You can create these however you would like. They're super simple. Just draw some lines and then some more lines. And then I started shading in our snowman and adding in our accents. Whether I'm using a paintbrush or a pencil, I'm always horrible at smiles. I don't know why. They always look crooked and wonky to me, and I always want to restart them 5,000 times. The little arms were the easiest part of the snowman to create on here, probably. And then things went south for about 5 minutes. Look at it! I made a boo-boo! You don't want to know how many cuss words you were spared in that error. And it just keeps getting worse. I tried to touch it up in my paintbrush. I didn't wipe it all the way off. Now it's got orange in there. Having patience doing this for a living is tough, waiting for paint to dry. After about 30 minutes, it was good to go and I was able to fix it. I added in some cork bottle lights, which I got off Amazon. They are down in the description box in my Amazon affiliate link for anyone interested. How adorable is this Etsy dupe? I don't really mess with resin very much, but these little ornaments caught my eye and I'm like, we can definitely create these without the resin. You're going to need to grab you some wooden ornaments. These are from Dollar Tree. They come in a little pack. You get 3 of them joints. We're going to be using these. I'm not using the exact color paints that they had on here. I decided to switch it up and went with 2 different color variations that I thought would just work for what I wanted to create. And I'm doing a 2 blend and a 3 blend. So on one ornament, I'm using 2 colors in case those of you that are not familiar with blending or you are new to it, you have one option here. Or if you want to get wild and try a 3 blend, we're doing a different one here. So for this one, I'm using the yellow, a pink, and a blue. And we're going to blend these together. It really helps if you keep both of the paints wet and you keep cleaning your brush. The more you clean the brush as you go back and forth, the less it allows for one color to become more dominant on that paintbrush. I did use a completely different brush for the blue paints, and then I came back in with the pink brush right here, you see, and as it starts getting heavy on the brush, I just wipe it off so this way it blends more as you go back. Again, the paint is completely wet as I'm doing this. It did not dry at all. I did notice the paint was drying over here and I was like, oh, and hurried up and grabbed my other color. This is like a teal, and I went in with a different brush and then brought the pink brush back in, and you can see it was really dominant still. So I kept trying to clean the brush off and then had to add more pink paint to bring it down. That will happen sometimes. No need to stress. Just make sure the paint stays wet and then come back in with the other color and blend down to the middle section where they meet. I went with some black chalk paint around the edges on a teeny tiny brush since we had like a little bit of a black frame on our Etsy pieces. Once that was dry, I then took the same brush, and this is a really tiny angled brush, which is really great for creating those little slanted pieces on your tree. And all I'm doing is moving our little angle brush back and forth, so this way we have those teeny tiny little poke outs of the branches. People, create as many trees as you want on your ornament. You know what I'm saying? Just add in what you feel is going to work for the design. There's really no right or wrong way to creating these. You can even add some faded ones far in the backgrounds. So this way it looks like there's, you know, more than it is. It gives a cute little illusion. And once you have your little pokes, just really tap, 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 tap that center with your paint and fill it all in. We're going to grab our resin, our glossy Mod Podge. Yep, that's all we're using here. And a lot of it, my friends, a lot of it. You see how much I got on this paintbrush? And I'm being really ginger with it. You want to make sure that you're not over smooshing it, because then you'll have extremely noticeable paint strokes along with some bubbles. Now, a bubble here and there isn't too bad. And honestly, anybody that's over visiting your house up on your ornaments close enough to notice a bubble or two, they're too close. Just tell them to back up. Let's take a real quick peek again at the Etsy piece, and now let's check out mine. If you're looking for more Christmas in July inspiration, check out this video right here. And as always, people, thank you all so much for hanging out with me. And until next time.